What are you doing up at this hour of the night?
What are you doing up at this hour of the night?
Prevention of crime. Every hour of the day and night.
Moviebreak
is the team that protects your property and you.
Hi, here I am with
Shahrbanoo Sadat,
and who made a great movie, which is The Orphanage, about a very underrepresented period in Afghan history. And speaking of Afghan history, this has been all over the news. And the first question which I have to ask is, how is it for you now to be here at such a point when you know what's going on in your home country? And I know some of your relatives and friends are still in Afghanistan. How does it feel?
I think I'm not relieved what happened, because everything what happened, everything that happened was so quick and sudden. But it was a great surprise for me, not only for me, but also for people living in Kabul, Afghanistan, also for Taliban themselves. They didn't know that they could take Kabul that easily with no fight or no fighting. And it's just like it's just so unreal, because everything happens so quick. Like the president was up here on the TV and he said that he's gonna stay, until the last drop of his blood, the way that he said it. And then the next day he was running away to destinations that no one knew. And then people, like everyone, were running to banks to get their money. And there was no money, there was no cash. It was like a crowd of like 1,500 people in front of each branch of bank. And there was no money in ATM machines. And it was a mess. Suddenly, the town was like this. Like when you watch these movies, that it is like an end of the world. And suddenly Kabul was like that, and people feeling so desperate, and so, they felt like they were trapped. And I felt like we are trapped because we couldn't leave anywhere. Suddenly the borders were closed, people were running to airport, and food were expensive, like 3 times more expensive. And the Taliban were approaching Kabul more and more. They got like 16 provinces in the last 3 weeks. And suddenly they just took Kabul with no fighting, because the national army, they had the order to not fight. And there was no president or no people in charge, So when the moment that I saw Taliban's vehicles on my street, it looked like a movie to me.
Speaking of this, actually, your movie, The Orphanage, ends with a very powerful scene, which for me was the most affecting scene in the whole movie, when the Mujahideen, in the end of the short communist period through which Afghanistan lived in the 80s, when the Mujahideen arrived. And it's also for the main character, like, at least his childhood, not his life. We know his life will go on happily for many years, but that his childhood ends at that point. Did it feel to you like history is now repeating itself, and that people fail to learn from the lesson that you remind them of in the movie? Because it recalls how people had a certain amount of freedom, not great freedom, but they could enjoy arts and women could study. So there were some basic freedoms. And then it was very repressed in the 90s. And then it was a little more liberated. And now it's again turning to very repressed.
Absolutely. I think history is repeating itself, not in Afghanistan, but in everywhere. When you read the history, when you're watching history through the archive, it is absolutely amazing the way that it's just, after a certain period of time, it's just repeating itself over and over. And I think that's why people are getting interested in history, and that's why it's important that public, like the majority of people, they know the history of their country, because they can learn from it. But this is not the case in Afghanistan, because, for example, Afghan archive is kept like a treasure that, like, people, like public, they cannot have access to. And even people like filmmakers or journalists that they want to have access to, they have to go through a really killing bureaucracy, and they have to invest like 1-2 years to just watch it. And then for using it, they have to, even if it's like a research purpose, they have to spend a lot of money. It's kind of like impossible for people to watch this archive, and I just don't understand why archive should be kept like something not, just like a treasure. And I think, and my generation specifically, we do not really know a lot about Afghanistan in 80s or in 70s or in 60s, and with this orphanage, this project, I learned a lot about the history, and I was very fascinated about the similarities between the 80s and the beginning of 90s to my time, even though I couldn't imagine that this end would be this similar. But still, I was amazed of, the similarities. Like I thought with myself, like if I replace Soviet Union with American invasion, and then if I replace Mujahideen with Taliban, things are quite the same, So I absolutely think that the history is repeating itself, and this will not be the last time that it is happening. Unfortunately, in future it will happen again. And if you study the current history of Afghanistan, it was always like a dark period, and then a bright period, and then a dark period, and then a bright period. I think, this also can give hope a little bit if we want to look at the bright side of it, that nothing will be permanently. So now that Taliban have the country, doesn't mean that they're going to keep it forever. I think we had it for 20 years, and now it's their turn. But they cannot keep it forever, and I'm just looking forward to what is coming after. Yeah, I'm hoping for something good happen.
So do you hope to return to Afghanistan and make movies there? Because the film industry in Afghanistan just started to burgeon and to come up very slightly, and then it was now crushed again by the Taliban. So do you hope to return to Afghanistan and maybe make movies there? And how was it even possible to make this movie, which looks amazing? Like, the settings are great. I was wondering, were they just standing there? How do you find such accurate settings, such great buildings that look like right from the time?
I didn't shoot my film in Afghanistan. I shot it in Tajikistan, and in Germany, and in Denmark. So I shot it in different places. For me, Afghanistan is not, of course, I have this wish of going to Afghanistan, but it has nothing to do with making films, because I'm a filmmaker. I make fiction film. I can recreate Afghanistan wherever I can find money. So I don't care in that sense to going back to Afghanistan, but I want to go back to Afghanistan because I have my apartment there and I have all my belongings there, and when I left Afghanistan on 23rd, 24th of August, I just locked my apartment, took the key and leave. I just took my computer, just this backpack, and that's it. I couldn't take my books, I couldn't take my clothes, I couldn't take anything, and I just bought this apartment. And I just moved there like it was hardly 6 months, and I had this dream of making a base for myself in Afghanistan, because I was living there in the last 20 years, and I was always pressured by my family to leave Afghanistan, to live somewhere else, because we had a lot of attacks and, terror attacks happening there, and a lot of educated people and talented people, they left Afghanistan, and who had a chance, who could get a visa to live in Europe or America or Canada or like other places, they took the opportunity, and I had the chance to travel a lot, but because I was traveling a lot, it didn't make sense for me. I couldn't see my future here or any other place. I saw my future in Afghanistan because my focus in cinema was everyday life of people. And then I thought I have to be able to live the everyday life in Kabul to be able to make film about it. So, and also I have my parents there, and they were old, and they were farmers, and they lived in central Afghanistan, and my father said that, my parents said that whatever happened, we will stay there, So I was thinking like, I don't want to live with this fear, because it was always this topic among Afghan people, especially the educated people in Kabul. Even like in the last 20 years, it was always this topic that where shall we go? Shall we go? Let's make a life somewhere else. There's no future in Afghanistan. But I trusted in Afghanistan so much, and I put everything that I had, like money, my life, like everything that I had. I trusted. I gambled with it, And this is not something I'm regretting yet. I think I still haven't given up on Afghanistan. I think it's important that Afghanistan has my type, like very naive, optimistic people.
Yeah, young females who are making movies and who are like, you're representing the future not only of Afghanistan cinema, but of cinema and art in general. Because you're a young woman filmmaker and you're one of those voices which in the past were never heard.
Exactly. I am the product of the last 20 years, in a way, because I was 11 when we moved back to Afghanistan after 11/9. And in the last 20 years, I went to school. I grew up in central Afghanistan. I go to school there, and then I moved to Kabul.
Actually, a boys' school. You went to a boys' school. So in the movie, we see a boys' orphanage. And I could imagine in many aspects it's very similar to a boys' school. So you really know what it's like to see all those boys interacting around. And speaking of your career in Afghanistan, you have 3 more movies which you want to make, because this movie, The Orphanage, is part of a 5-part series about the diary of one of your best friends who also has a very small part in the movie. So how do you plan or think about finishing this anthology of movies?
I'm already on my way. I'm working on the 3rd part since the last.
I know, it's called Kabul Jan.
Exactly. Yeah, you did a research. Yes, it is called Kabul Jan. It's a romantic comedy, and it's supposed to happen in Kabul in present time, but present time was so fast for me to catch. So now it will be about Kabul like before Taliban's arrival, and I'm also developing the 4th part. So, but it's it's just on the development level. But I am into it. I will finish this before.
So a romantic comedy, seems very rare, because it's such a light subject, and surprisingly, The Orphanage, even if it sounds dark if you describe the plot and say, oh, it's about a poor boy living on the street going to a communist orphanage, it's actually surprisingly light-hearted and sometimes even funny, even though quite heavy things happen. For example, we get a look into a mental asylum, which is horrible, and it doesn't seem to affect the children so much psychologically. What would you say has this kind of experience your own, but also working with the kids learned you about living with trauma and enjoying life despite living through traumatic times?
I think, the thing is, like, a lot of people in Afghanistan, they don't know what trauma means, because it's not only one big thing that happened in your life and then you have to deal with that. It's a lot of big things in your life that happen one after another in a rapid speed, and you cannot still, you are not dealing with the first one that the second one happened, and then you're not dealing with the second one that the third one happened, and this can go over and over. So I think the life is okay when you live in Afghanistan. The problem is started when you leave Afghanistan and you live in somewhere else. Then you have all the space to think about, to digest all these traumas and to think about all this, like because I've been traveling in the last 10, 12 years a lot, like all around the world. And my problem was I was very happy in Afghanistan, in Kabul. And then my problem started when I was for a longer time in Europe, like when I was like editing film, or, I was here for like 10 months or 11 months or 1 year. Then I couldn't sleep in the night, and I couldn't, I had like all kind of, I don't know, it's something that, like people who lived in war countries or in problem countries, they experience that. But I've never heard about this. I experienced it myself. So I think this is exactly how I want to show it in my movies, because when you, for example, when you're watching American films, war is always an epic thing. It's always a big thing that changes everything, But it's not the case in Afghanistan, because war is there in the last 42 years, and it's not epic anymore. It's just something usual in your
everyday life,
your routine, So you're dealing with that differently. You learn how to have fun and how to have your life and how to enjoy, while at the same time the most tragic things happen to you. So this is like a mood of survival. You're in the mood of survival when you live in such countries. The problem started when you are not in that mood anymore and you live.
Is movie making for you also a kind of dealing with this experience and keeping on surviving by making those films, because they also give you a purpose or a goal, something to work toward for and cling to, which will always be with you no matter where you go?
Yeah, for me, well, many reasons, but one is for me, like with writing and being able to express and being able to talk about all kind of thoughts and feelings, is kind of meditation for me. I can really explore like what is going on in my head, and I can analyze things, and I have the platform to make things, to make my phone, and I'm really grateful for having this job. Really, I mean, any filmmaker can say that, but I feel like I have the right to say it more because, even though, I think this is the reason that I want to make this romantic comedy now, because a lot of people think that life in Afghanistan is equal to suffering and, having really bad time. But I had my best time of life in the last 20 years in Afghanistan, especially the last 10 years, And even though, like, a lot of bad things happening, a lot of traumas and a lot of things happening, but on the other hand, you're really appreciating the basic things in life, because you understand that life, you don't take life for granted. You feel like this can end any moment. And when you live in countries like they are dealing with war, or they're dealing with big like security problems, you really enjoy, you learn to live in moments.
Thank you.
This is what I really like.
Those are wonderful last words. So we will definitely be looking out for your next movie and your next movies. And, we wish you all the best for the future. And of course, hope that history will at one point turn bright again. Thank you.
For speaking.